Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to my overview of Kingdom Come Deliverance II. So, traditionally I do overviews on this channel where they just go for the first 2 hours, give you broad strokes info, short punchy video. I have a little spiel about it. I haven't been doing that in the past month or so. We've been experimenting with longer form reviews, but the truth of the matter is, reports are coming in that this game's anywhere from, 50 to 70 to 100 hours playtime. It's being praised widely, and I want to clock through it. I do, but I don't want to rush it, and I want to do it on my time with side quests and all that sort of stuff. So I just think putting in 18 hours and doing a longer form overview is just not going to cut it. So we're going with the old school approach where I just give you the info, let you know that it's out so it's on your radar, make sure it's, not a technical mess or anything like that. There's also a little bit of drama around this, which I'll touch on because you kind of have to these days as much as I avoid it. But the long and short, from the short time that I've played with it, I'm enamored. I love this so much, and I badly want to keep playing it and play more. As a fan of the first game, I love the first game to death. I think a lot of people interested in this game are probably from that wheelhouse. It is as good an on-ramp to a sequel as you could possibly hope for. You could play this without having played the first game, I think so. However, a lot of the previously on sort of info dump and throwback terms and all, I think you could do it, it'd be fine, but it does kind of exposition dump a little bit just to make sure people's memories are up to speed. It seems less interested in teaching a new player and more throwing back to, not member berries, but it's assuming people haven't played this since 2018. So I guess for that sector of the audience, if you haven't played the first game, you should probably just play that. You can probably get it on the cheap. It's still an excellent game. I was playing some yesterday ahead of this, so comparisons will be fresh in my mind. So almost everything that could be touched up that you would want to have adjusted or fixed going into the sequel have been done. Graphical fidelity and performance are probably things at the forefront of people's minds. There always was a bit of a sort of that janky indie vibe to the first game, and it's still got a little bit of jank with, the character animations and what have you. But even just, being more form-fitting with all the armor and the general graphical overhaul that's gone on. The environments, you're in a more sort of swampy marshland area, so you got more weeping willows and details in the water to make it more swampy. So the biome feels different, but also more dense from a vegetative perspective. And on top of that, it's running buttery smooth. On this rig, the first game still can have some issues because it has optimization problems, but obviously they've got a bit more fuck you money this time around, and they've spent it well. So this thing hasn't started hitched, anything like that. The frame rate's going gangbusters. And arguably there's some pretty big set piece stuff in the beginning. The first, basically when you start, you go straight into in a few weeks time, or well, rather you play this intro prologue of a siege, and then it cuts back to a few weeks earlier, right? So it's an action-packed, bombastic, get the audience interested straight off the bat. It works incredibly well. It showcases how some of the systems have changed, like combat, and also, it gives you a crossbow and tells you to shoot dudes in the head, push ladders off walls, that sort of thing. So it's a really good deep end kind of dump of what's changed, what's been touched up. Funnily enough, my muscle memory's still taking a little bit getting used to. You hold right click to block now, as opposed to Q. In fact, the combat has been overhauled in the best way possible. It is still early days, obviously. This game is very much going to be a slow burn, but from what it's presented mechanically, I'm much happier with it. It's still clunky. If you didn't play the first game and you play this straight away, it might be a bit of a shock because it's intentionally clunky, but where the first game, it's sort of, let's be honest, hid behind the, well, you're just a farm boy, so you're shit at combat kind of excuse. But, to be honest, under the hood, the combat was kind of elbows everywhere. It was messy. So you would expect it to be sort of cleaned up this time around, being that you're a bit more of a whiz because you're playing Henry again. So the combat system's tighter. The radial 5-point system with a jab, which was in the first one, has been streamlined. You've essentially got 3 points, above left and right, and then the lower point is the stab now. Stab used to be kind of right click, transfer your buttons for your controller, what have you, but they've swapped right click out for sort of block. So it's frantic in the beginning prologue, but then it opens up into the proper prologue with you and Hans going on an envoy mission, sort of a little band of brothers traveling along the land, and you stop for camp. And from there you can do a more robust tutorialization of the combat. And it's really good because you duel with Hans, and it gets the idea of the block riposte rhythm that I feel the game didn't really get right in the first one, again being more scrappy. So blocking into riposte, into their block, into their riposte, so you're sort of trading blows back and forth until someone runs out of stamina, and that seems to be the rhythm that they're setting up now. I like it. The combat's cleaner. As someone who enjoyed the first system, but also is honest with himself about how kind of sloppy it was, intentionally or otherwise, this is better. So yeah, look, I don't want to necessarily give much away narratively other than to say it's leaning hard into the bromance with Hans, which is probably one of the strongest parts of the first game, so it's good to see that leading heavy. You're depowered very quickly through, let's say, injury. It's a bit gamey, but I think most gamers have come to accept these sort of things in sequels, amnesia, whatever. But you become grievously hurt and recover within the prologue, and that's the excuse for basically resetting all your skill points and that to 0 and starting again. I'm fine with that, whatever, it's a game. But yeah, it's been pretty heavy on tutorializing out stuff that, honestly, it didn't really do that much in the first game. Like doing alchemy and flower picking. These were things you could do in the first game, which I basically didn't do at all. So it was kind of cool for the game to take the time to walk you through it. Something I've noticed is it's much more cinematically leaning. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, there was a cinematic quality to the first game, of course, during its rare moments, and then you'd go off doing side quests, doing whatever you want. This just feels like it's got a bit more of that dab of polish, where you can see its more cinematic aspirations shining through. Now look, it's a really strong start. Everything that you would want improved is. I did mention that there is some drama around this game. I haven't looked into it too much because I went into this fairly blind, as many of you probably did. But I did check out a lot of the reviews on YouTube are kind of getting dislike smashed, no matter who it is and what they think. And I dug under the hood to figure it out. And look, spoilers, I suppose, but apparently super late in the game, you can kind of option into having a bit of a gay romance with Sir Hans. That's as best as I can understand it. And people are pretty up in arms. They're tying things together, what with Embracer Group absorbing the parent publisher for this company. So I can see the dots being joined. I understand it for sure. And I think to dismiss these concerns out of hand would be honestly fairly disingenuous. If you recall, the first game had a real controversy cycle around it because it's set in bloody 15th century Bohemia and everyone's white. And this was right when all the sort of woke, for lack of a better term, whatever you want to bloody call it, it's a bit of a blanket term these days, but people got outraged because it was ultimately trying to be historically accurate to something relevant to the studio founders. I don't find that to be particularly radical or wild, but that was the drama, that was the problem. But I suppose my point is that it was the little guy that fought and won, and Kingdom Come had its enormous breakout success, and all of that was kind of built on sticking to your guns and being historically accurate. I also heard that there's like a black character in this that rocks up as a Moor. And as best as I understand it, again, this is all a bit secondhand, but he's treated as I suppose you could say, a novelty to Henry. I've never seen anyone like that, and if you want to question him about where he's from and all that, he will open up about the good and the bad, about where he comes from. To me, that is internally sound, right? It's quite possible you're going to come across one of these foreign people through the course of this game, and your guy is going to be incredulous and curious and want to know more. To me, there is historical accuracy underpinning that whole interaction. So I do wonder about the whole gay thing with the Sir Hans thing, but less from the perspective of the main concern, which is, up until this point, the narrative of this game is fairly linear, if we're being truly honest. Your sweetheart Teresa and, kind of romancing her in a much more traditional romance archetype. It seems a little bit of a curveball and more of a gamey, hey, it's Mass Effect, you can fuck all your crewmates kind of mechanic. It's hard to say without having to contextually understand it first person, but it's more just be aware of it, right? A lot of people are very swept up in this new counterculture of pushing back on woke agenda stuff, and I totally understand it and support it, and that's the main reason I'm actually taking a chunk of time to talk about it, because to some people they just won't buy it on principle, and I understand that, surely. But I do worry about a game that was built on trying to be sort of internally accurate as it can be, that's kind of set up this star-crossed lovers romance since the first game. It does seem a bit curveball to just say, hey, well, you can gay it up if you want. Now, if they wanted to treat it with the same sort of care that all the other themes get treated with, where you're probably shunned for sinning and scorned and, actually really pull on that thread, the idea of being gay in 15th century Europe and how the royal court probably will not enjoy that one bit. Now we're onto something. Sure, do it. It's your story, whatever, but be consistent. And I think that's the main concern. I just worry that people are conflating the bromance between you and Sir Hans and seeing something that's gay that never really was. Much like when you see younger people talk about the Lord of the Rings trilogies and they sort of, in the environment that they've grown up in, they see Frodo and Sam or Gimli and Legolas as being like homoerotic, and it's really just not. It's just an indication that you've never had a close friend and been through some really awful experiences together and had each other's back. Anyway, I feel like I've spent even way too much on that, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Main takeaways: game's off to an incredible start. Performs really well, visual touch-ups everywhere, core mechanics have been fixed and overhauled and streamlined, and it's a slow burn, resetting from zero and off to the races you go. I don't need to spend much more time on that. If you want a super robust 100-hour review, there's plenty of them out there from much more high-profile people, but that's my part for now, and I might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.